Zane Dawson hadn't planned on coaching a group of 8-year-olds that Saturday morning. He was just dropping off his daughter, Mila, in his worn-out sneakers and faded hoodie, clutching a thermos of cheap coffee and trying not to yawn in front of the other parents. But when the actual coach called in sick and the kids started kicking soccer balls at each other's heads, chaos erupting on the field, Zane sighed and stepped in. "All right, team," he clapped his hands. "We're not trying to survive a stampede. Let's try passing." He didn't notice the woman in heels and a fitted navy coat step up beside the cluster of other parents until she called out. That's the first time I've seen someone actually get them to listen. Zane blinked, then glanced over. She was stunning. Long, dark hair pulled into a clean ponytail, sunglasses tucked into her coat pocket, and a calm confidence that made her stand out from the other sideline chatter. She crouched beside a little boy tying his shoelaces and smiled. Zane swallowed. "You there, Mom?" "MHMM," she stood. "That's Max. He's the one eating grass." Zane turned toward the field. "Got it. Max, buddy, let's not snack on the field. I promise post-practice snacks are better." Max grinned, grass stuck to his cheek. The woman laughed. "You're actually good with them." "I'd hope so," Zane said, brushing his hands on his jeans. "Mine's the one with the pink laces. Mila, I'm just filling in." "I'm Tessa," she offered, holding out her hand. "Tessa Wren." He shook it, trying not to notice how soft her skin was, how manicured her nails were compared to the calluses on his own. Zane Dawson, resident Chaos manager. "Nice to meet you, Coach Chaos." He chuckled, but there was something behind her tone: curiosity, amusement. They didn't speak again until the end of practice, when the kids ran toward their parents and Zane wiped sweat from his brow. "You did good out there," Tessa said, walking up as he gathered cones. "Thanks, I'm not exactly qualified, but someone had to step in." "I think you're more qualified than you realize." He looked at her. She was watching him closely now, that confident calmness replaced with something gentler. "You coach for a living." Zane shook his head. "No, I work construction, or used to. Business dried up after my brother got sick and I had to take care of him. Been picking up odd jobs lately, nothing steady." Tessa's expression didn't shift into pity like he expected. Instead, she just nodded. "That's hard, but your daughter's lucky to have you." He glanced over at Mila, who was laughing with Max over juice boxes. "She's my whole world." There was a silence between them, but not an awkward one, a warm one, easy. "Would you consider coaching full-time?" she asked suddenly. Zane raised a brow. "For this team?" "For the league, paid." He blinked. "That's generous, but I'm not certified." "I own the league," she said simply. "Well, I fund it." Zane's eyes widened. "Wait, you." Tessa gave a small shrug. "I run a company. Sports are a passion project. I invest in things that matter." Zane tried not to let his jaw drop. "What kind of company?" "You've probably heard of Rentech." He had, everyone had. They built everything from software to fitness gear. $1 billion valuation. He stared at her like she'd just told him she was royalty. "I thought CEOs didn't have time for soccer sidelines," he said. "I make time for Max. I don't miss his games." He smiled, respecting that more than anything. She leaned in slightly. "Let me take you for coffee sometime. I owe you for saving today's practice." Zane's chest tightened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." He scratched the back of his neck. I usually don't fit into the world of people who own companies." Tessa tilted her head. "Let me decide that." Before he could say another word, Max ran over. "Mom, Mila says her dad can do a flip." Zane laughed. "A flip might sprain something these days." Tessa smiled wide. "Guess I'll have to see for myself. Coffee." He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, coffee. Tomorrow. Tomorrow works. As she walked away with Max, Zane felt something stir in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next day, she picked him up in a sleek black car that looked like it cost more than his entire apartment. He felt underdressed in his button-down and clean jeans, but when she saw him, Tessa smiled like he was wearing a tux. They went to a rooftop cafe in the city. The waitress greeted Tessa by name. I bring clients here, she explained, but not like this. Zane sipped his coffee slowly. So what do people like me call this? Tessa leaned forward. A date. He almost choked. You're not joking. Zane, she said softly, you're smart. Kind, you care about your kid more than anything. You stepped in without blinking, that's rare. He looked down. I've never met someone like you. Maybe you've just been looking in the wrong places. They talked for hours. About life. Kids, music, her company, his struggles. He noticed how she really listened, not just nodded politely, and she never once brought up his lack of money or polished resume. When they left, she walked him to the car. Can I see you again? She asked. Zane stared at her. Tessa, you're a billionaire. She smiled. And you're the first man who's looked me in the eye without trying to impress me. He stared at her like she was some impossible dream, and yet, she was right there. Yeah, he said finally, you can see me again. She leaned in, brushed a kiss to his cheek. Good. And just like that, Zane Dawson, broke construction worker and substitute soccer coach, found himself falling for the CEO who didn't care about his wallet, only his heart. Tessa parked the car herself. No valet, no assistant, just her stepping out in a tailored cream blazer and tapered trousers, the city's evening light glancing off the gold clasp of her watch. Zane had waited outside the restaurant like he said he would, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, hands in his jacket pockets. He'd spent the day laying tile in a friend's kitchen for cash, and his fingertips were still raw beneath the bandages. She reached him with a quiet smile. You waited. I said I would. I like that. Zane held the door open for her. The inside of the restaurant was dimly lit, candles flickering on each table like small promises. A hostess stepped forward, already pulling out 2 menus. This way, Ms. Wren. Zane glanced at her as they followed. Do they just know you everywhere? Tessa didn't look fazed. Only the places I invest in. He exhaled a soft laugh, not because it was funny, but because he didn't know what else to do when every corner of her life felt like a world he'd never entered. As they sat, he caught the subtle scent of her perfume, subtle, clean, nothing too sweet. Something expensive that didn't try too hard. The waiter poured sparkling water into crystal glasses without asking. Zane watched the bubbles rise. I've never been in a place like this, he admitted. Tessa set her napkin in her lap. That surprises me. Why? You carry yourself like someone who knows his worth. That usually comes with a better wine list. Zane shook his head. You think too highly of me. No, she said. I think you've been overlooked too long. He paused, unsure how to respond. No one had ever said that to him before. The waiter returned. She ordered a sea-based dish without looking at the menu. Zane hesitated, then chose something modest, though the prices didn't have dollar signs. That told him more than enough. When they were alone again, he asked, Why did you really ask me out? Tessa leaned back slightly. Because I wanted to see what you'd look like in candlelight. He blinked. That's unexpected. I could have said something safe, but I don't want safe. Zane leaned forward, folding his arms on the table. You're not afraid of making people uncomfortable, are you? Not if it gets me to the truth. He studied her. All right, your turn. What's something about you don't tell people? She thought for a moment. I hate elevators. Zane raised an eyebrow. That's not what I expected. I avoid them when I can. Stairs are quieter. You own more buildings than most people drive past in a year, and you take the stairs. She smiled faintly. Power doesn't mean fear disappears. I just learned how to work around it. Zane nodded slowly. Fair. The food came, plated like art. He didn't touch it right away. You're quiet, she noted. I'm trying to figure out if this is real. What do you mean? You, me, this table, this place. It feels like I blinked and ended up in someone else's life. Tessa met his eyes. You're in yours, I'm just visiting. The honesty in her tone did something to him, fractured something small and guarded behind his ribs. She wasn't making fun of him. She wasn't pitying him. She was just there. He took a bite of the risotto. It was perfect. Of course it was. You know, she said, Max asked if Mila could come over next weekend. Zane looked up. He did. Yes, I thought we could do a cookout, something simple. I'd like that. Good, I'll have the backyard cleaned up. You don't have a staff for that. I do, she said, but I like pulling weeds sometimes. Keeps me grounded. Zane studied her again. You're full of contradictions. No, I'm full of choices. That silenced him, not because he didn't have a reply, but because the way she said it made him feel like maybe he still had choices too. Like maybe his life wasn't finished deciding who he got to be. By the time they left, the streetlights had flickered on and the air had cooled. She walked him back to her car, the heels of her shoes clicking softly against the pavement. Tell me something else, she said as she unlocked the doors. About me. No, about what you want. Zane looked at her, really looked. I want to be enough. She didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for his hand, not to shake it, not to test him, just to hold it. You already are. He didn't answer, but he didn't let go either. When they reached his place, she parked along the curb. He turned to her, unsure how to end the night, unsure if there even was a right way to do it. Will I see you again? He asked. I hope so, she said, and kissed him. Not rushed, not tentative, just certain. He tasted mint and something warm in the back of his throat, like the moment mattered more than either of them could explain. When she pulled away, she didn't say anything else. She just waited until he stepped onto the sidewalk, then drove off into the quiet. Zane stood there for a long while, the kiss still lingering, the streetlight casting shadows on the sidewalk. He didn't know what he'd stepped into, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just changed forever. The scent of grilled vegetables floated through the air, mingling with the sound of children's laughter and the low crackle of the fire pit. Zane stood behind the grill in Tessa's backyard, flipping skewers with a pair of tongs she'd handed him without hesitation. The yard was expansive, framed by tall hedges and flowering trees, and the patio lights above them glowed a soft amber. He'd arrived an hour earlier with Mila, who was now barefoot in the grass playing tag with Max and a few of his cousins. Tessa's sister had brought her twins, and her brother-in-law was helping set up a folding table near the pool. Zane felt outnumbered but oddly at ease, despite the fact that he was wearing a flannel shirt that didn't quite hide the tear at the elbow. Behind him, Tessa appeared with 2 glasses of iced tea, handing him one. Your grill technique's better than I expected, she said, brushing her hair behind one ear. Did you think I'd set something on fire? I thought you'd be modest about being good at it. He nodded toward the kids. Mila's having a good time, that's what matters. She fits right in, Tessa said, sipping from her glass. You both do. Zane glanced over his shoulder. How long have you had this place? 5 years. I bought it after Max turned 2. I wanted space, but not too far from the city. She rested her arm on the counter beside him. The previous owners had a koi pond, had it filled in the first week. Koi pond. Too much maintenance. I don't like things that only look good on the surface. He nearly laughed. You're full of surprises. Good ones, I hope. So far. She bumped his arm lightly, then turned to check on the table setup. A woman with the same eyes approached, carrying a tray of sliced watermelon. She looked between Zane and Tessa with thinly veiled curiosity before placing the tray down and walking over. You must be Zane, she said, offering her hand. I'm Laurel, Tessa's sister. Zane wiped his hand on a towel before shaking hers. Nice to meet you. Thanks for hosting. Please, I've been waiting to meet the guy who made her cancel a board dinner. Tessa gave a dry look. I rescheduled it. Same thing, Laurel said. Then to Zane, she doesn't reschedule, not for anyone. Zane tilted his head. I didn't know. Tessa shrugged. I wanted to be here, that's all. Laurel gave her sister a long look, then smiled tightly before wandering back toward the kids. She protective of you? Zane asked. She's cautious. I've made questionable choices in the past. She likes to remind me. Should I be worried? Tessa looked at him. You're the only one who hasn't asked me about my equity portfolio or suggested we collaborate. That already puts you in a different category. He raised an eyebrow. That happened a lot. Often enough that I can tell when someone's calculating their words. And me. You say what you mean. Even when you hesitate, I can tell it's not because you're hiding something. It's because you're thinking. He turned the last of the skewers, placing them carefully on a platter. I've never had someone read me like that. Tessa's voice softened. I've learned to look past what people present. After dinner, while the kids roasted marshmallows, Zane found himself sitting beside Tessa on the edge of a stone bench, his knees brushing hers. She was watching Max and Mila, her expression unreadable. What are you thinking about? He asked. How fast everything's changed. In a good way. In a way I didn't expect. I'd gotten used to keeping things compartmentalized. Work, parenting, everything had its place. And now. She turned to him. Now I want things to overlap. Zane leaned back slightly, stretching his legs. I used to think keeping things separate was the only way to survive. Do the job, be present for Mila, don't think about anything else. What changed? You. She didn't look away. I've been wondering something. Yeah. If things got serious between us, would that scare you? He didn't answer right away. The fire crackled a few feet away, and one of the kids shrieked in delight as a marshmallow caught fire. Zane finally said, only if you expect me to become someone else. I'd never ask that. Then no, it doesn't scare me. She exhaled slowly, as if she'd been holding the question in for too long. Good. He stood and offered her his hand. Come on, let's get the kids cleaned up. They walked back to the house together, shoulders brushing, hands brushing but not quite holding. Inside, Tessa's sister helped the kids into clean clothes while Zane rinsed dishes in the sink. The kitchen was wide, modern, the marble countertops cool under his hands. Tessa joined him at the sink, taking a towel to dry. You don't have to do this. I want to. She didn't argue. Later, after the twins had left and Max had fallen asleep in a pile of pillows, Zane stepped onto the back patio where Tessa was sitting alone, feet tucked beneath her. I should head out, he said quietly. She looked up. You don't have to rush. Mila's already asleep in the truck. She'll be grumpy if I make her walk. Tessa stood and crossed to him. Can I ask you something? He nodded. If I asked you to stay the night just to stay, no expectations, would that overwhelm you? He hesitated. I think it'd mean more than you think. I'm not afraid of meaning, she said. Zane looked down, then back at her. I'll stay, but not tonight. Not because I don't want to, but because if I do, I won't want to leave. She stepped closer. Then we'll wait, but not forever. He nodded once, not forever. As he walked to his truck, Zane felt the weight of the moment settle into his chest. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just curiosity. It was something real, something with roots. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of where it might lead. The elevator doors opened to the top floor of Wren Tech headquarters, revealing a glass-walled office that overlooked half the city. Zane stepped out slowly, adjusting the collar of his blazer borrowed from Laurel's husband, who'd insisted it would pass the test. His boots were polished as best he could manage, and his fingers were still nicked from a recent drywall job, but his shoulders were squared and his eyes were steady. Tessa stood by her desk, arms crossed as she looked out the window. She turned when she heard him. You came. You said you wanted me here at 4. I figured you meant it. I always do, she said, closing the distance between them. I wasn't sure if you'd walk through those doors. I almost didn't, Zane admitted, but not because I didn't want to. I just wasn't sure I belonged. You do, she said simply, and I don't want to keep living like you don't. She crossed to a console on the wall and pressed a button. The glass behind her slowly dimmed, turning opaque, cutting out the skyline. No audience this time, she said, just us. Zane exhaled. You know I've never even been in a building like this, right? That's not why I brought you here. Then why? Because I don't want to keep my personal life in the shadows. I've spent years pretending everything has to be separate. I'm done with that. Zane stepped closer, voice low. And you're okay doing that with me? In your world? I trust you. You don't pretend. You don't posture. You're honest even when it's hard. That matters more than anything I've built here. He studied her face. She looked tired, like she'd been carrying something heavy for too long and was finally ready to let it go. Why now? He asked. Why today? She walked to her desk and picked up a document, an official contract, sealed in a folder. This is for the league, she said. A full-time coaching position. Salary, benefits, full creative control of curriculum. It's yours if you want it. He blinked. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a beginning. You said you wanted to be enough. You already are. But also want you to have something that's yours. He opened the folder, scanning the pages. This is real. It is. You earned it. He set the folder down carefully. I don't want to be something you fix, Tessa. You're not. I'm not offering this out of charity. This is about what you bring to the kids, to the field. I've watched you. You're the reason they started playing like a team. You're the reason Max started sleeping through the night again. Zane's voice went quiet. You never told me that. I didn't want to make it a burden, but Max used to wake up crying. Since you started coaching, he hasn't. Zane crossed to her and touched her cheek gently. You could have had anyone. You chose me. I still don't fully understand it. I didn't choose you because you're perfect, Zane. I chose you because you're real. Because when everything else is polished and prepared and rehearsed, you remind me what it feels like to be alive. He pulled her into his arms, and for a moment, the office disappeared, the pressure, the expectations, all of it. It was just her heartbeat against his chest. Then I'll take the job, he whispered, but only if I get to keep you too. You already have me. They stayed like that until her assistant knocked once and slid a note under the door. Tessa picked it up and read it, then looked at Zane. There's an event tonight, a gala, last-minute change. I'm expected. Zane stepped back. You want me to come with you? No, she said. I want to go with you. He frowned. What's the difference? I don't want you to be my +1. I want us to walk in as a couple. He hesitated. I don't exactly have gala clothes. We'll fix that. She made a call, quick and quiet. An hour later, they stood in a private fitting room, tailors adjusting cuffs and measuring inseams. Zane looked at himself in the mirror, unfamiliar in a midnight blue suit that fit like it was made for him. Tessa stood behind him, adjusting his collar. You sure this isn't too much? He asked. She met his eyes in the mirror. You've never looked more like yourself. At the gala, the cameras flashed as they stepped out of the car. Zane didn't flinch. Tessa threaded her fingers through his and held tight. Reporters turned, murmurs spreading through the crowd. She leaned in. They're going to ask who you are. Should I say I'm your contractor? Say you're the man I love. Zane's breath caught. He turned to her, right there on the carpet, amidst the clicking lenses and whispered speculation. You love me. Completely. He blinked once, then kissed her under the lights, in front of the world, not rushed, not hesitant, just certain. Inside, he didn't know anyone. He didn't speak the language of stocks and startups, but Tessa never left his side. She introduced him with pride. She touched his arm when he looked uncertain. She laughed when he made her laugh, and every time she did, he felt like he belonged more. When they returned to her home that night, after Mila had been picked up by Laurel and Max was fast asleep upstairs, Zane stood in her doorway and didn't ask for permission. I'm not leaving tonight. Tessa nodded once, stepping back to let him in. Good. As dawn broke, soft light filtering through the curtains, Zane lay beside her, watching the rise and fall of her breath. Something in his chest had quieted, the part that always braced for rejection, the part that never felt safe. He knew what this was now, not a fantasy, not a mistake, but a life. One filled with shared mornings, packed lunches, foul-mouthed soccer chants, and nights that ended in whispered truths. He reached for her hand, and she curled into him without opening her eyes. Zane Dawson, who once stood on a muddy field with no job and no plan, now held everything he never thought he'd have: a purpose, a partner, and a love that didn't care about resumes or balances, or who walked into whose world first. They were in it together now. And they weren't going back. Are you sure about this? Tessa asked, standing at the edge of the bleachers, the autumn wind catching the ends of her coat. Zane tightened the last strap on a portable goalpost and glanced up at her. I've never been more sure of anything. She watched him for a beat, the field stretching out behind him, now lined with cones and freshly painted markers. It wasn't the same park anymore. Not since the league had expanded. Not since Zane had taken over. The new uniforms, the upgraded equipment, the kids running drills with real structure, it was all his doing. The city's youth department had offered them a long-term contract. Tessa had helped negotiate it, but Zane had insisted on running the program his way. No corporate branding, no flashy sponsorships, just kids, a ball, and someone who believed in them. You're creating something bigger than soccer, she said. Zane stood, brushing his hands on his pants. That's the point. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wasn't going to give this to you until later, but I can't wait. He took it, eyebrows raising as he unfolded it. It was a permit. For what? He asked. Land, she said, on the east side near the river. It's been sitting empty for years. Pulled strings. It's zoned for community development. His fingers tightened slightly around the paper. You want me to build something. I want you to dream out loud. A field, a rec center, a place kids can go when the world's a little too heavy. You have full control. I'll fund it, but it's yours. Zane didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was low. I don't even know what to say. Say you'll do it. He met her eyes. I'll do it. She stepped closer. I want you to believe this isn't temporary. That we're not building a moment, we're building a life. Zane reached for her hand. I believed that the minute you kissed me in front of those cameras. She smiled, her gaze softening. You handled that better than I expected. I figured if I was going to be yours, I might as well do it loudly. A whistle blew across the field. Mila and Max ran toward them, cheeks red from the chill, breath puffing in the air. Coach Zane, Max shouted, I scored twice. Zane scooped him up in one arm. You're gonna need to teach me that trick. Mila tugged on Tessa's hand. Can we get hot chocolate now? Tessa glanced at Zane. What do you think, coach? He grinned. Let's make it a team reward. Later that evening, the four of them sat around a small fire pit in Zane's backyard. Tessa had insisted on helping him renovate the space. Now it had string lights, cushioned chairs, and a stone patio that Zane had laid himself. Mila and Max were bundled in blankets, sipping hot chocolate with whipped cream mustaches. Tessa leaned into Zane, her head on his shoulder, her shoes kicked off. I never asked you, she said. Why did you say yes to dinner that first night? He turned toward her. Because you looked at me like I wasn't a problem to solve. She tilted her head, and now? Now you look at me like I'm something you want to hold on to. I do, she said. I want all of it, the long days, the messy parts, the quiet nights. Zane covered her hand with his. Then let's stop waiting. For what? For someday. She blinked. Are you saying what think you're saying? He stood, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out a small, velvet box. I'm not asking for a ceremony tomorrow. I'm not asking for anything flashy. I'm asking for forever, with you. Her breath caught as he opened the box. A simple ring, elegant, no diamonds, just a brushed gold band with a tiny inscription inside, all in. Zane looked up at her. Will you marry me, Tessa? She didn't hesitate. Yes. The kids cheered behind them, though they didn't fully understand what had just happened. Tessa laughed, pulling Zane into a kiss that was soft and certain. They didn't announce it to the press. They didn't throw a lavish party. The wedding happened 3 months later, in the same park where they'd first met. The league kids formed a loose aisle, tossing flower petals and soccer confetti as Mila and Max held hands and walked ahead of them. Zane wore a suit that finally belonged to him. Tessa wore a simple white dress with a pale blue ribbon at her waist. They exchanged vows under a tent strung with lights, with the city skyline behind them and the sound of laughter floating through the trees. Laurel officiated. She cried halfway through. Afterward, they danced barefoot on the grass while the kids played tag around them. No cameras, no investors, no boardrooms, just people who mattered. Tessa whispered into Zane's ear that night, as they stood wrapped in each other's arms beneath the stars. You changed everything. Zane kissed her temple. So did you. They bought the riverfront land together, built a center with classrooms, a gym, and a turf field. Zane ran the programs. Tessa helped expand them. Max and Mila grew up with scraped knees and full hearts, never doubting what love looked like. Years later, when people asked how it all began, Zane would smile and say, she offered me coffee. I gave her my whole heart. And Tessa would always add, he showed me what it meant to come home. They never stopped choosing each other, not once, not even on the hard days. Because when love is built on truth, and trust grows in the dirt of real life, it doesn't fade. It endures. Always.